Hello and welcome back to Met Sport News. I'm Theo Parrott and today I'm going to be discussing the controversial topic of racism in sport. Unfortunately, racism is a very prominent topic within all aspects of our life, and it always has been. A very current and topical aspect of our life which racism is present within is sport. There are many different examples of racism in sport, such as online abuse on social media, racist chants and songs in the crowds, and negative portrayal from the media to do with race. Alongside the racism that you see in sport nowadays, there are many cases of athletes and teams campaigning and fighting against racial injustice. For example, the Black Lives Matter and Taking the Knee, other campaigns and athletes directly speaking out about racism they've suffered from, such as Lewis Hamilton. In this feature, I'm going to be delving deeper into a specific topic and a specific example of racism in sport and how athletes who did speak out about the racial injustice were punished. This feature will focus on the bravery of two American sprinters by the names of Tommie Smith and John Carlos at the 1968 Olympic Games held in Mexico City. The two sprinters, who won gold and bronze in the 200-meter final, were expelled from the Games after they protested against racial injustice on the podium. The two athletes are pictured here. Tommie Smith on the top step after he won gold and set a new world record in the 200 metres of 19.78 seconds, and John Carlos, who stood on the third step after he won bronze in the same event. The two athletes wanted to put their athletic brilliance to good use. They wanted to use their platform on the biggest stage of them all at the Olympic Games to protest against racial and social injustice. After their triumph in the 200 metres, they stepped up to the medal podium. However, neither athlete was wearing any shoes. As the UF anthem played, they bowed their heads and raised their black-gloved fists into the air in what has now become a famous image of protest against social injustice. The image has not only become famous due to their athletic talent, but in fact their bravery for standing up for black rights. The no shoes and black socks that they had on show represented black American poverty, while the gloves that they raised in the air symbolised black American strength and unity. After the ceremonies and the medal podiums had finished, they were expelled from the Games and both received many death threats. However, this was not the only story from this medal ceremony. The man pictured on the right goes by the name of Peter Norman, and he was a white athlete from Australia and the silver medalist in this 200-metre event. It was in fact his idea to stand up for the racial injustice, and he wore a badge in empathy for human rights, showing that he supported the other two athletes in what they did and should equally be recognised for his bravery. Peter Norman was also dismissed from the Games, which in the end killed his career. However, the bravery wouldn't go unnoticed, and he will go down in history alongside the other two athletes. The three athletes became very close friends, and it stayed that way long after their careers were over. The American sprinters, Smith and Carlos, were even present at Norman's funeral, showing how much they appreciated his support and the sacrificing of his career to fight against racial injustice. I was then joined by Claudia Orr, a track athlete at Cardiff Met, where she was asked where she thinks racial equality sits in regards to the Olympic Games.
Racial inequality sits really at the forefront of the Olympic Games, unfortunately. This has been shown in several different capacities in different years of the Olympic events. Obviously in the 1968 Summer Olympics in Mexico City, it was really a big scandal going on, and it was really bad that shunned from the Games because it says to the viewers and the spectators and the fans that it's not okay to stand up for equality, which is obviously completely wrong. So I think that was really sad that they weren't allowed to speak their true minds and what they believe in.
So, as you mentioned, of course, the Olympics is typically a stage for athletes to show their fight and highlight the different mishaps in sport and raise concerns that they have to do with racial inequality, for example. In the Olympic Games, you have many different sports. Do you believe that there's a difference between black and white sports?
Yeah, I think there is a bit of a subdivide between different sports for white and black people. So, for example, at the Olympic Games, because it's track and field, you often find a lot of black and white people, but that's why black people use it as a pedestal for them to display their thoughts and feelings about inequality within sporting issues, because they've got all ethnicities there watching, so they can really get a target audience, which I think is really important. So I think them being shunned is not good. So yeah, there definitely are white and black sports. For black sports, basketball, NFL, and like I said, athletics, track athletics, and the Olympics is a good international standpoint for black people to put their mark on racial inequality.
In the 1968 Games, it wasn't just black people that stood up for the fight for racial inequality, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was also Peter Norman, the silver medalist in the 200 metres in that specific Games. He was a white athlete from Australia, and he stood up there on the pedestal with them and wore a badge for human rights in protest with them against racial inequality. And I think this is a real stepping point in history for equality, because to fight inequality, you need all races to join together. You can't just have black people fighting for them. You need white people and everything as well.
Thanks to these three athletes and many other pioneers, we have seen much improvement in terms of equality and racial justice within the Olympic Games. Now, more than half a century on, at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games, one of the primary policies is unity in diversity. There are also many more opportunities for athletes to express their views following recommendations from human rights experts. For example, the Great British women's football team were allowed to take the knee before their game against Chile to highlight racial inequality and discrimination. However, there are still many things to improve upon and change, as podium protests are still banned under Rule 50 of the International Olympic Committee's Olympic Charter. However, we are certainly heading in the right direction.
This has been Theo Parrott with Met Sport News.